session. Unfortunately, as with several other official representatives, Hannah Muro, the Secretary of State for Migration of Spain, was unable to attend in the end because the government of Spain changed literally yesterday the policy on international travel for the members of the government, and issued sort of generic recommendations to limit international travel as much as possible. So we won't be having those closing words, and anyway, most of you have already been here for the day yesterday and the discussion about future plans for grants and the possibility of trying to move forward this research agenda. So I will only conclude by perhaps emphasizing, for the sake of the colleagues who joined only today, that we are quite sure, we realize and we acknowledge that we're not going to be able to complete all of our aspirations and our research agenda within the lifetime of the COST Action. So our ambitions were very many and very great, and we will be able to perhaps make progress with pilot studies for all of the components that we would be interested in, and what we're going to try to do is to steer our work not so much into trying to complete both the post-harmonization stage and the data playground for all of the potential survey data that we have detected, also because it was a surprise to us to actually uncover 900 surveys focusing specifically or importantly on ethnic and migrant minorities across Europe. To be quite honest, we thought that the number would be closer to 200 or 300 surveys, so 900 exceeded all of our expectations. And there's no human way that within the human resources that we have in the COST Action and the very little money for the actual research work that the COST Action provides, which is nearly nil, and the very useful but limited support that the SHOCK project provides, that we can do all of this for all of the types of surveys that we have uncovered. So our strategy is going to be to work around these pilot themes that we discussed yesterday. So we will be prioritizing, on the one hand, the topics relating to civic and political engagement and social ties in the first place. And one of the reasons to do that is that we have a lot of expertise on that topic in the COST Action, so it's easy for us to start a first pilot on that particular topic. But then it's been quite loud and clear to us that issues relating to perceptions and experiences of discrimination, feelings of belonging, and other types of social identity topics are quite interesting for policy makers as well. So this was the second topic on which we have quite a bit of expertise in the Action Network, and then we were going to prioritize as a second pilot theme. Originally, we had planned to look into health as a potential third pilot theme, but we will need to reconsider perhaps that choice if there are other sort of softer indicators that might be of greater interest to policy makers. So our goal will be to try to run these pilots in relation to the question data bank work. We really need to identify the questions in the questionnaires first before we can move on into any post-harmonization process. So obviously, as Eduard Bonet has indicated, prior to post-harmonizing data, there's a number of stages that we need to take, and we're quite well aware of what those are. And obviously, the first one is to be able to take stock of what the questions are and how comparable they are, and for which surveys and with which target populations and sample designs those questions are actually comparable among themselves. So The realistic goals is that by the end of the cost action, we hope to have been able to at least run both the question database pilot at least for one of the themes, and ideally for at least two, maybe three, and to at least try the cost harmonization process at the very least with this first civic, political, and social ties theme. We're not really sure whether we will have enough resources to move beyond that. But one of the things that we are really alert to, and if any of you comes across potential funding scheme, is the opportunity to engage in collaborations with all sorts of organizations, whether that's foundations. So I'm thinking that if in the future SVR is interested in some of the work that we're doing in the cost action, or other foundations in your home countries actually might be interested in the work that we're doing, or would want to explore with us, for example, some of these post-harmonization pilots to answer specific questions that they're interested in order to influence policy making, then we're really open to any suggestions and opportunities for collaboration. Beyond that sort of a scoping exercise of potential funding or collaboration, we will be keeping an eye open on calls such as the ones that we discussed yesterday. In particular, I think that this opportunity within an Erasmus Plus scheme might be a quite promising one. So when you go back home, if this is something that you might want to have conversations around with people in your organizations, whether you work for a university or whether you work for a non-degree granting research center or organization, or for a foundation, or for a private company or a think tank, and you're interested in this possibility, then just drop me an email and we will sort of start discussing around the possibilities to move forward and put an interesting application proposal for the Erasmus Plus bid, which would be in February 2021. And that's just one possible idea, but just to say that here in the cost action, we're really in a workshop. So if when you go back home, there are opportunities that you think might be useful to connect us with, for example, let's say that your organization might be interested in writing a policy brief on a specific topic, and you think that the work that we're doing around the metadata registry could have elements that are of interest to you for that policy brief, then we're happy to engage in collaborations to work in joint policy briefs. We're not necessarily adamant that all policy briefs need to be written only by ourselves, so we can be collaborating in drafting policy briefs jointly with everyone's logos included, and with everyone sort of participating in the endeavor. I'll just finish by thanking all of you again for your loyal participation in the event, despite the not so propitious circumstances for international travel. I want to thank again Amparo Gonzalez, even if it's not shown necessarily today in this location. She put a lot of work with us to prepare the program and to ensure that the event could happen initially foreseen in PESIC. And also, even if they're not here, again, a sort of very big thanks to the COST Action Headquarters office in Brussels, because actually it was thanks to them that we can actually be here today and yesterday with this upgraded venue and the upgraded lunch and coffee breaks that we got, thanks to the unfortunate health situation. Stay healthy, stay safe, observe the sanitary precautions, not just in your way back home, but also at home. And I hope that at some better time we can meet again soon, hopefully. Thank you. And there's coffee break if you want, and we can stay. Those of you who don't have to rush to take a train or a flight, we can sort of just stay for a little while, having informal conversations during the coffee break if you'd like to do so. Thank you very much, and have safe travels, and hope to see you soon.